It's me, Mario.
So with the majority of video game adaptations being questionable for the better part of the past 4 decades, not saying certain titles and certain title adaptations don't have their fans, but I'm sure that a majority of both the gaming community as well as just fans of movies in general will tell you that these adaptations have been underwhelming, to say the least. Usually due to the creators of these pictures not acknowledging the source material enough, or even in recent years with the release of more video game-based television series. I think the most recent tragedy case is Halo from Paramount Plus. They're just produced by people that choose to just not even pay attention or even visit the source material whatsoever in the form that is video games. When that happens, it seems to just entail a recipe for failure, both commercially and artistically. When it doesn't commit to one side or the other of changing an adaptation so much to where it just becomes a completely different identity than the original source material, it just ends up pleasing nobody. Not one demographic is pleased more than the other. It just seems that everybody loses. However, in the past few years, it seems there have been some diamonds that have been dug up in the rough. It seems as though with video game studios being way more involved with the creative process with these third-party or collaborative studios that are making their movie adaptations. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like we're starting to enter a new renaissance, at least in comparison to what we've gotten in the past 4 decades. It seems as though the producers of these adaptations seem to, at the very least, acknowledge and respect the source material. With the current live-action Sonic movies, for example, they've done a complete 180 from what we, the internet, initially thought it was going to be like. I'm sure we can remember and imagine that initial reveal trailer. It was just absolutely hilarious. Who knew that after the internet has completely bullied the studio to just redo the whole movie, that it would have become one of the most profitable, if not it was the most profitable video game franchise adaptation to date. And of course, how can I bring up the whole discussion of video game adaptations without discussing this year's The Last of Us? It has captured the hearts of the fans and has grabbed the interest of people who have never played the video games nor have ever even picked up a controller before. Expect a deep dive review of that series sometime later. Goodness gracious. Safe to say gamers are eating better now than they've ever have been. So with the announcement of an animated Mario movie from a Nintendo Direct over a year ago, I mean, this was already revealed years ago via articles and everything, but I never really paid attention to any of the articles, nor did I have even any knowledge of this Mario movie being made until last year when they announced that iconic cast. My interest was certainly tickled since Nintendo has not made an attempt, even an attempt, to make a movie from one of their IPs in about 3 decades now. The last one being the original Super Mario Brothers live action movie. I haven't seen it, and nor do I really have any interest in seeing it. It looks like it'd be a fun time watching it with friends while you're drunk or high, but watching it by myself, I don't know. I don't want to watch it. My initial reaction to Illumination Entertainment being the collaborator with Nintendo was not so thrilled, as I'm really not a big fan of Illumination movies. The only franchise that I ever remotely enjoyed or even considered to watch as a child was the Despicable Me franchise. I still don't even care to watch the 3rd one, nor do I care at all to watch all of the spin-offs with the Minions. Fuck Minions. All my homies hate the Minions. It just seems with all their movies, it really is just the quality of the juvenile writing and their animation style that just puts them at the bottom for me when it comes to animation studios. My mind just buzzed at how the quality of both the animation and the writing would be if it was DreamWorks or even Pixar that got a hold of the IP. But oh well, this is the timeline we are in. And due to my long history with the Mario franchise, I mean, come on, how am I not gonna see this? No matter how big of a train wreck this movie seemed like it was gonna be, who's not gonna go see the fucking Super Mario Brothers movie? Quick little synopsis of my history with Mario. My very first Mario game was Super Mario Sunshine on the Nintendo GameCube back in the early 2000s, which was my very first console. So from there, I decided to obviously stay on track with all 3D release Mario games that have been releasing for every single main Nintendo console ever since the GameCube. Going from middle school to high school is when I started transitioning away from Nintendo games, unfortunately, and started going more into the mainstream stuff that most teenagers are associated with playing. But once I was able to actually buy myself my own consoles with my own money, so I went ahead and catched up on some of the titles I've been missing from Nintendo from the past 5 to 10 years now with the Switch, as well as a lot of titles with the Nintendo 3DS and the Wii U. From home consoles to handheld games, I went ahead and even visited all of the old retro games and just realized that they are just as fun and are just as timeless as the 3D Mario games as well. So I completely understand both massive fan bases of both genres of the fictitious Italian plumber man. How can I not go go with this review without mentioning the infamous announcement that was the Mario cast and what my initial thoughts of it at the time were. I remember what I was doing and where I was at the time of that announcement. Absolutely incredible. He's just so cool. Fast forward a year later and we finally got the initial trailer. And I thought, wow, this looks visually spectacular by Illumination standards. But then of course out came the dialogue, specifically from Chris Pratt as Mario. And it just really came off as, well, Chris Pratt. Honestly, like even from the initial trailer, I never thought he sounded terrible. It's certainly the most bland out of the rest of the cast. I was able to hear a slight Brooklyn accent, and I was immediately able to tell what they wanted Chris to go for. They wanted him to sound more like Mario sounded before Super Mario 64. Because guess what, guys? Before sounding like "It's a me," he actually sounded like this in the 90s.
Drugs can kill, and if you do drugs, you go to hell before you die.
That is actually what he sounded like. So for them to just incorporate that from the Super Mario Super Show, I think it was called, as well as just other iterations of Mario that were present at the time before the famous and infamous voice by Charles Martinet, I thought it was alright. Am I okay to have that opinion now, especially now that we've seen the movie? Those lines in that specific trailer just did not do Chris a service whatsoever. Whatever team decided to put those specific lines of dialogue into those trailers definitely owe Chris an apology, because those lines definitely came off as lazy in both pitch and tone. My biggest concern still, above everything else, was the quality of the jokes that be present, because again, this was Illumination. With each trailer, my doubt was slowly starting to extinguish, and my optimism was rising. The whole lead up of this whole movie in this past year has just been so emotional. It's just been playing with everyone's emotions and feelings, and oh god, it was just absolute whiplash effect. Now we're finally here, so now let's finally discuss the Super Mario plot of this movie. Mario and Luigi, expert plumbers, are mysteriously transported to the Mushroom Kingdom, where Princess Peach will need help to stop the evil tyrant Bowser from taking over the kingdom. Let's go! So the first element of this movie that I want to acknowledge and get out of the way is the pacing. I think the pacing is the biggest noticeable element. So prior to watching the movie, I saw that the runtime was only an hour and a half, and I was thinking to myself, oh, okay, that makes sense. I guess it's an animated movie. It's meant to cater to the whole family. Kids will inevitably love fast-moving colors and quick-witty dialogue, and my ADHD ass should have no problem keeping up with this movie. But oh no! I felt like I just got whiplash from watching that. The script tackles just so many locations, so many character introductions, so many set pieces. This will for sure be overwhelming to the average moviegoer who isn't a hardcore Mario fan, because they're just not going to catch all the references and are going to have just plenty of questions as to why things are the way they are in this wacky world. But even with my amount of Mario knowledge and understanding of how this world operates and how wacky these things are, I was still barely able to catch my breath sometimes. The amount of events just crammed to this hour and a half movie just felt way too much, where I didn't feel as invested into each location or each character as I'm sure the movie wanted me to feel. I feel like an extra 15 to 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes would have been serviceable. And they still could have kept the fast-paced action going, so that way the kid's attention span will still be there. One of the biggest reasons why this movie's pacing was the way it was because it felt like there was no character that was disagreeing with anything. It seemed like anytime a character was requesting or asking for something, the other party was just like, yeah, sure, okay, let's do it. Yeah, sure, I agree with you. No arguments there. And I was just taken aback in the theater like, what the hell? I know it's a kid's movie, but holy moly, there's not going to be any sort of disagreement or tension whatsoever between these characters that are asking to do some pretty ridiculous things. I don't think I would have been questioning these things if I was younger. I feel like I'm just getting older now, and it's just a scary thought now that I'm thinking about it. The pacing in this movie felt faster than the Sonic movie. The Sonic movie. Just take a minute to ponder on that. Now moving on to the actual story of this Mario movie, as if people came to go see this movie for the story? Raise your hand if you went into the Super Mario Bros. Movie expecting a complex tale that tackles the deep mythological themes on the very existence of good triumphing over evil. Sir, you in the back, please put your hand down because you are lying. But for real though, if you raised your hand, that's just weird. The very simple concept of this world started back when the most advanced gaming system on the planet looked like this. Story was never a priority with these creators over a simple platformer aiming to just be fun to play. But I guess if you want to really dissect Mario lore, this is a tale as old as time. The hero rescues the princess from the castle, defeats the dragon, reclaims the kingdom. That's it. Nothing more was ever needed for these games. All that has changed throughout the history of this franchise's story was the presentation. Whether it's Mario saving Peach from a castle, from a tropical island resort, from outer space, all the trains you can possibly imagine. Everything, no matter what, Mario was always doing the same thing. And he's been doing the same thing for the past 4 decades. So when it came to a movie adaptation, I didn't want anything different. Just present it to me with a new, vibrant coat of paint of a wacky world that triggers my childhood memories of the games through its animation and sound effects. That being said, Yeah, the story is pretty bare bones here. Here's my defense again of this being specifically targeted for a demographic of children. And that's okay. It's okay for it to be easy to follow. Now, these were the controversial elements that we were discussing prior to the movie's release. The characters, the performances, how are they? To put it short, they're simple as well. Just like the story of a Mario game though, do I ask for deep, compelling character arcs in a Super Mario movie? No. Did we technically get more character development than I would have thought? Kind of. The simple adjectives that have been used to associate with these characters are still here and are very clear to read, to where even newcomers who aren't even too familiar with these certain characters from the Mario universe, they'll immediately understand the type of personality that they're supposed to have. Mario was courageous and headstrong to go into the face of danger, no questions asked. Guess what, guys? Chris Pratt, he was fine. He was actually just fine. I won't say he was amazing, but he was alright. The Brooklyn accent was more prominent here, and even his over-exaggerated Italian accent sounded like a very effective fan dub of Mario. And thank goodness those questionable lines from the trailer, "Mushroom Kingdom, here we come." Straight up Linda from Bob's Burgers. Thank goodness those lines were completely cut from the movie. I think the internet does owe Chris an apology. I don't think the internet has to praise him for what he's done here, but he doesn't deserve the absolute hate that he got. Now, I won't praise him since every other member from the cast definitely outshined him still. Charlie Day as Luigi was awesome. He's so funny. I mean, no surprise there. Charlie Day's voice has always embodied anxiety for me. Therefore, he just embodies the essence of anxiety that is present with Luigi. The arc of him developing more courage over the course of the movie, that character arc could have been so much more impactful if Luigi wasn't sidelined to shit in this movie. Unfortunately, one of the best characters here was the damsel in distress. So we just saw him behind bars and didn't see him for much screen time at all. And that was just very disappointing. And especially at the beginning when we showed the bond that Chris and Charlie had with their characters, they were a very charming duo. So to pluck that away for the majority of the movie's runtime just felt like an absolute ripoff. And we even got even more clear indications of what Mario and Luigi's relationship is like through a clear flashback sequence where we show that Mario was always the one to look after Luigi. He was always there to look after him, to protect him from danger. So to have Luigi come full circle and save Mario at the very end was sweet. But again, that dynamic and moment could have been sold even harder if Luigi had been present for the whole adventure and we see him develop that courage throughout the course of the movie. That would have been amazing. Anya as Peach was bubbly and was an actual girl boss in this movie without it being overly done to the point of clear pandering. She wasn't a damsel in distress like she's been in every single Mario game, and I love that decision. And she ended up kicking the most Koopa ass out of every other character in this whole movie. So hey, feminism ain't dead. Alright! And yes, I may be biased since I do want Anya to step on me. And those animators knew what they were doing with a certain shot of Peach looking back while she was riding a motorcycle. I knew what those animators were doing. They knew what they were doing. Keegan as Toad was cute, and there were actually a lot of good laughs with his character when it came to him compensating for his size. The weakest performance for me, surprisingly, was Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong, just because his voice just didn't sound like an old man. He sounded more like a crotchety uncle. The biggest standouts to me, without a doubt, were Jack Black as Bowser and Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong. Bowser was menacingly badass when he had to be, but the best aspects of him were when he would just gawk on about Peach and his obsession with winning over the princess's heart. It was hilarious, and it just made me realize that this is actually probably something that Bowser would most likely do in between each game and each cutscene he was in, just scheming to win over the princess in just the most absurd ways. Also at this point, I'm sure all of you have seen his vocal performances. Peaches, 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 peaches. I just think it's funny that at some point with certain notes, it just sounds like straight up Jack Black freestyling in the sound booth. And considering it has the possibility now to win an Oscar is pretty epic. Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong was literally just Seth Rogen. So hearing that iconic laugh was inevitable. We all knew it was coming, but it was still fun to hear nonetheless. He probably provided me the most laughs actually, due to his constant banter and bickering with Mario. Some real sick burns just really got a good laugh out of me. Also, I guess I would use the term supporting character loosely with the Mario Bros family. They were here for the introduction, just to establish how run down Mario is as a plumber. The whole point of them was to hit home how the brothers' plumbing business is just set to fail, only for them to be impressed by them at the end. I mean, it was kind of weird just thinking about it because it's never completely established how old these Mario brothers are, so why would they even care what their parents think of them? I guess that's just an Italian thing, I suppose. You could tell that the writers were certainly trying to reach for a theme there when it comes to self-acceptance, especially when it comes to getting ridiculed by your own family. I saw it there. I was starting to see that little spark there, but then it just completely fizzed out and was just gone by the end. Whatever. Overall, the whole cast of character writing is shallow, but I would say the performances are like one of the last remaining things that is wrong with this movie. For them to squeeze in the occasional catchphrase and everything was still very endearing, and for them to capture the essence of these characters without being overly annoying is pretty impressive. Now, besides the cast, moving on to the strongest aspects of this whole movie, which is the animation and music. So if I haven't said it already, let me re-emphasize again for the millionth time. Without a doubt, this is the most pristine looking Illumination movies to date. Every other movie from this studio looks so flat. It feels like it's just too cartoonish with no depth or layers or texture much to the character models that will make any moment used for dramatic effect just fall flat. It was clear that certain moments in this movie were meant to be taken more serious, and it was actually possible for the first time for me to feel a higher sense of tension while still pertaining to the flashy Saturday morning cartoon animation the studio is known for. But the two main standouts in the animation were the reflection on characters' eyes as well as the water textures. The attention to detail in both of those aspects, seriously, those water effects, they were seriously on par with Pixar. I'm not exaggerating. So props to the most definitely overworked and most definitely not compensated properly team of animators. You all did a phenomenal job. As for the music, it's a mixed bag for me, and it's a very heartbreaking mixed bag because half of the tracks in this movie were reorchestrated scores of existing Mario tracks from the multiple games, and they were fantastic. They were familiar enough to warm my heart with fond memories, but different enough to make it its own. Brian Tyler did a phenomenal job bringing such dramatic weight to what would usually be just a silly background track. The epic orchestral score just enhanced the visuals even more. Now for the stinky side of the soundtrack, the licensed music. I was not big on a majority of the picked licensed tracks here. They either clash with the tone of what was happening on screen, or best case scenario, they were tracks that were fine for the scene they were playing in, but they were tracks that are overused so much in movies. Once I hear them, it just immediately takes me out of the movie, and I just start thinking about how much the song is overplayed rather than pay attention to what's actually happening in the scene. So now to discuss the member berries. You remember. What I feel is the biggest saving grace to this whole adaptation. It's not the story, it's not the characters, it's definitely not the jokes. By the way, the jokes aren't great, but they're not terrible either. They're passable for kids' movie standards, for family movie standards. It was the clear understanding and love of why we, the fans, love the Mario games. The wacky different worlds across all the different Mario games, even the side titles are referenced here, Mario Kart being the biggest one. All the recognizable creatures, all the side NPCs, the recognizable move sets, the audio cues accompanying these move sets, all the power-ups. It was just an absolute all-you-can-eat buffet of references. And usually when it comes to adaptations, references and callbacks are usually pretty lazy and feel like they just don't gel naturally with the script or the context of the movie. But I feel like in this case, this is one of the few examples in an adaptation where I feel like it needs the references. And in this case, they definitely came from a place of love and respect rather than half-assed obligation. Overall thoughts? I had fun. And at the end of the day, that is like the bare minimum I was gonna ask for when it came to a Mario movie. God forbid a Mario movie be written for the whole family to enjoy. So to all you snobs out there that wanted Pixar levels of deep emotions from a platformer video game of fictitious plumber man, what do you want from Mario? Would I have accepted deeper levels of storytelling? Always. But it's fucking Mario. To the current records that this movie is currently taking, I'm not surprised at all. I had a hunch that this movie was already going to be the highest grossing video game adaptation of all time, simply due to the fact that it's Mario. That IP, that name alone is what's gonna sell. Who doesn't know Mario? My 80-year-old grandmother knows who Mario is. People who didn't even play a single video game in their life know who Mario is. Therefore, I'm not shocked at all with the post-credit scene confirming a sequel that is to come. And what I feel is more important than records and numbers is for this movie to pave the way for Nintendo to now have the confidence and the faith in us, the viewers, wanting to go see adaptations of their beloved IPs. We will pay to go see movies based off of your beloved franchise, Nintendo. And who knows, maybe eventually in the far future, maybe one day we may get an official crossover with Sonic. And with Sonic, maybe eventually, dare I say it, a Smash Brothers movie? Is the Smash Brothers cinematic universe currently being built under our noses? History shall be made on that day if that were to ever be conceived. GG's, Nintendo. Hope to see more from you in the future. 7 out of 10, stellar animation that pleases Mario fans to the core with shallow storytelling and jarring pacing. Let me know what you all thought of the movie. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you not even care to see it? Let me know. I wanted to start having more discussions with you, the viewers, more so. So feel free to comment down below. It's a tiny mushroom. I'm sure nothing will go wrong here.